Hey there, it's Kat, and this is Brews and Reviews. It's time for part 2 of my April 2022 wrap-up, and I have to say it has been a whole last month since I filmed part 1. We're in June now. Essentially what happened is that I was sick, and then I got another illness, which lasted like a month, and then I got COVID, and it hit me really hard. So I am still recovering now, and I don't feel the best, but, you know, trying to get back on the horse and actually film things that were supposed to be up a month ago. 2 months ago now? I don't know, it's a long time. And I just wanted to do this wrap up before I completely forget what I read in April, so let's get to it. So the first 2 books that I'm going to talk about in this part of the wrap-up is Killer Candy and Slasher Heart. This is book 1 and 2 in the Lapland Underground series by Holly Bloom. I originally picked Killer Candy up because it was one of those books that was advertised on TikTok through a quote, and I was like, you got me. So I picked it up, and I thought, oh, this is just going to be, you know, fun time Kindle Unlimited book. It's about an ex-assassin who goes to work at a strip club who also have like sort of gang leading things. It's a reverse harem romance, and I didn't expect to just enjoy this series as much as I did, and I just really like it. There's something about there's something about this really strong woman main character and how she deals with things and how she interacts with all of the different people that I really liked and could really get behind. I will say the first book is not really very heavy on the romance. I don't really think very much romantic happens at all. I can't even remember a sex scene. But that was like a month and a half ago since I read it. The second book is definitely more steamy. There is a lot more sex scenes, and it, you know, goes where you'd want a reverse harem to go. There are 3 guys, 3 very different guys, and they're all just involved in, you know, it ticks a lot of boxes. That's all I want to say. I think Killer Candy is very much a setup / build-up type book, and it is fun. There is a lot more stripper politics than I expected, but, like, I maybe could have dialed down on the bitchy stripper politics, but that kind of disappears from the second book, so I was really happy with that turn of events. I think the first book really set things up nicely to just sort of go the way that I wanted them to go in the second book. And now all I have to say is the second book, the ending of it was such a cliffhanger. I was not pleased at all by this cliffhanger because it was like 2 a.m. and I'd stayed up to read to this bit, and then it was a cliffhanger and the next book wasn't out yet. But it thankfully is out now, because now it's June. But at the end of April I was very distressed that I could not know the outcome of this cliffhanger, because I need to know. I still haven't read it yet, and I really need to know. So I definitely recommend this series if you like dark romance. I gave both of these books 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm very eagerly anticipating book 3, so yeah, check it out. The next book that I picked up was Storm of Locusts by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the second book in the Sixth World Quartet, I believe, and I enjoyed this book not quite as much as I enjoyed the first one. So without trying to spoil anything from the first book, this is set in a post-apocalyptic world where most of the world's been destroyed by a flood. There are gods, there are monsters, and in this one there are a lot of post-apocalyptic human-type people. I didn't love that. I enjoyed the first book because it was more about the gods and the monsters, and this book focused more on the outside world, so like the civilizations that spring up and like human trafficking type things, and I'm never really a fan of that. It's not super for me. I think it was done well, I just don't think it really hit my personal taste, and I enjoyed the gods and monsters part a lot more than the survivor apocalypse part. Also, the only other thing I have to say is that bugs are gross and I hate them. The next book that I read was a collection of short stories called Crave by Miranda Silver. So I picked this up because I read Priceless by Miranda Silver last year. I really enjoyed that. The smut was good, the story was good. I was like, okay, if I'm going to read some short stories along the smut line, then, you know, this is an author that I would like to check out. And there was also a Priceless short story in that, so I was eager to sort of see what the characters from Priceless were getting up to in the future. It was one short story at the end of the book, so if you are looking for a continuation of Priceless, most of this short story collection is not to do with that. They are completely random short stories. And quite a lot of them were very good smut. I must admit, they were very well thought out. There's only one short story in it that I didn't like, and it was about a band and a singer, and they were hooking up in a tour van. And there was something about it that I really didn't like, and I think it was the use of the word angel. And I just, like, the whole, like, purity harping on angel thing is not for me. So I didn't like that one. But then the end was the Priceless story, and I really liked that one. I felt like the characters were still in character, and it was just a nice smutty extra time, and it was nice to see where they went after the end of Priceless. So I did end up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars, and that is discounting the story that I didn't like, because I think there were about 7 or 8 stories, and the rest of them were really good. So it's like 20 pages of the whole book that I didn't like. So I feel like overall 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Yes, I finally read my first Robin Hobb book, and I was not disappointed. I actually really enjoyed this book, surprisingly more than I thought I was going to. So in this book, the Crown Prince has a bastard son, and when people find out about it, he has to abdicate, and you follow this bastard son Fitz as he sort of is taken in by the crown, but he's just acknowledged as a bastard, and he eventually becomes an assassin's apprentice. I don't think that's spoiling anything. I feel like that's pretty obvious from the title of this book. It's very much like a training book, and Fitz is very young at the start of the book, and the older he gets, the more I enjoyed the book. There is some animal death in this book, particularly dogs, so if that will upset you, then maybe take that into account before picking this book up. I feel like it wasn't done in a way where like the animal just died for the sake of dying, so it didn't bother me quite as much as it does in other books where it's just like, oh, I just killed the dog for the shock factor. That wasn't what happened in here. So I was like, I don't like it, but it's not the worst thing. So just be aware that that happens if that is gonna like affect you in any way. The end of the book I really liked, and I didn't want to stop reading. So, you know, can't recommend it enough. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I picked up was Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. Again, another assassin book. Another training, like assassin school type book. We follow a group of girls who are training to be assassin nuns. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. I think it was slow at times, but like the pacing worked in this type of fantasy book for me. I don't know, it's like a specific slow-paced fantasy build-up thing, and for some reason I like that. I did find some things about plot and characters to be quite obvious. I still liked it though, and it was an enjoyable fantasy for me, so I'm intrigued to see where it goes from here. The next book that I picked up was The Wind and the Void by Ryan Kirk. This is the 3rd and final book in the Nightblade trilogy, and I was surprised by how much this book got to me. I wasn't expecting the end to make me cry, but it did. I feel like this was a great conclusion, and the further into this series that I got, the more Gemmell vibes that I got. I mean, it doesn't hit quite the same as Gemmell, because I don't think anything ever will to me, but there are vibes that I get from this that reminded me of David Gemmell, so I enjoyed that from that perspective. And like, I think the further you get into the series, the more that shines through. So I'd be really interested to pick up anything that Ryan Kirk has written after this to see if that sort of vibe continues. Also, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, which I think is a consistent rating across this entire series. The next book that I picked up was The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I read this as a buddy read with Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book, and it was bang average. I cannot say that I particularly enjoyed this book because it was so slow. You know how I was talking about the slow pacing being a good thing in Red Sister? Well, it really wasn't in here, because it felt like I was wasting my time as I was reading it. I knew this book was really popular on BookTube like back in the day, and I'm kind of struggling to understand why. Because this feels like half a book, and half of this book could have been chopped from this book to squish it together with the second book to make it one whole book. And then maybe I would have liked it a bit more. The premise of this book is that a princess runs away from her wedding day because she doesn't want to get married. And there are 2 men who are chasing her. And one of them is a prince that she's supposed to marry, and the other is an assassin who's trying to kill her. And you see her interact with these 2 guys, not knowing which is which. And you as a reader don't know which is which, except it's very obviously telegraphed like, the first time that the 2 guys are together. So like I figured it out really quickly, and then I was like, maybe it's not, but I was right. And then I was very disappointed that I was right, and that one thing very early on had like put up a flagpole and said, I'm here, this is me, I am this one. So that was annoying. I did think the ending of this book got way better. There was a whole lot of, I'm going to be the serving wench in a tavern for a whole ass length of time, and you just chop half of that out. No one cares. Also, her brother made no sense. His whole inclusion in this story made absolutely no sense. He just popped up to give her news sometimes and then was like, I'm angry and I'm leaving. It was pointless. So the end was better and I was disappointed by this book. So I'm not sure I'm going to continue with this series, but also I kind of want to because like the story only just started towards the end of this book and like maybe it will continue being like better? I don't know. I have all 3 books in the series, so I'm kind of like, should I? But also I feel like a lot of people are like, don't, so who knows. I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars, though I feel like it probably should have been lower. The next book that I picked up was Erased Certainty by Leah Steele. This is a shifter reverse horror and romance, and it's the 2nd book in this series, and I was just kind of intrigued as to where this went after the 1st book, because the main character notoriously spends most of the 1st book unconscious. She literally wakes up at the end. Like, there are flashback scenes where she is a conscious lady, but half of it she is unconscious. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder what will happen when she's awake. So I thought I'll pick this book up and see what happens. And it is better than the 1st book overall, and I did enjoy seeing the characters sort of come together after seeing them have separate interactions or be unable to interact. I do think the main character is just not very good at communicating. She just refuses to communicate with the guys in the book, and I'm like, a lot of your problems could be solved a lot quicker if you just had a conversation with people, and I do kind of hate that. It does get better in the 3rd book, which spoilers for me, I read the 3rd book in the series, and I will say the flashbacks in this book are kind of annoying. There's quite a lot of them, and they go on for a long time, and they are like the least interesting part of it, because they're not romantic. And I came here for a romance book, so they're annoying. Mostly I did just enjoy the romance, and it was a lot without becoming too much. So yeah, I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars, and it was fine. I liked it enough to read the 3rd book in the series in May, so. The next book that I picked up was Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. I finally continued with the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. This is the 2nd book. I don't really want to describe what this book is about because it goes on a whole tangent from the 1st book, and I feel like major spoilers would be happening if I tried to discuss anything that was happening here. It is so much darker than the 1st book, and I really liked it. I was really invested, and I didn't want to stop reading. So yeah, I really liked where this went, and I liked the new characters that were introduced and sort of everything that happened. I mean, it was dark. It was, you know, not a pleasant time for anyone involved. But I still liked it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up I read King of Shadows by Amelia Wilde. This is a Hades Persephone retelling. I have no thoughts on this book. There wasn't really a plot, except, like, Persephone trying to run away from her mom, who owns some flower farm thing. Anyway, she decides to go with Hades to his diamond mine in an underground mountain, and it's just terrible. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, so this is where we're going with this review here. I could have brought back Complaints with Cat for this book, and that's how bad it was. It was just so bad. The one redeeming feature that this book had is that it had good smut. The problem behind it is that the smut was not consensual. I couldn't find the consent in it. In the context of the story, it's very questionable at best. I feel like saying it's not consensual is not quite right, but it just feels off. Like, it doesn't feel completely consensual, I think is a better description. So the guy in it has a tear fetish, and he likes to make her cry a lot. She cries a lot anyway. I don't know, it kind of wants to be like a degradation, humiliation thing, except the way that it does it is kind of like, oh, you're just an asshole, and you just are like a manipulative abuser. That's the way it comes across, and I was not here for that. I didn't enjoy it. All of the characters were trash people, and I hated them. Also, just the characters, the plot, the writing, it wasn't great. Can't recommend. Sorry. The next book that I picked up was Hot Vampire Next Door Season 2 by Nikki St. Crow. Yeah, I finally read this one. I've been saying that I'm going to read it for ages, and just haven't been picking it up. Finally did. It was fun, and I enjoyed the 2 main characters sort of playing with each other. It had good smut in it, and I liked how the story developed into more vampire politics within this sort of town where the paranormal and human world sort of interact with each other. It's kind of fun. I just want more, and I feel like this series would really benefit from being read as a whole. So you read like Hot Vampire Next Door Season 1, 2, and 3 all together. It basically needs to be marathoned to be truly enjoyed, I think, because it's just very, very short. I think there are about 140 pages. It's a Kindle Vella series, so it's released episodically, and you get about 20 episodes in a season, and I just feel like I could have done with all of it at once. I still haven't read the third one, but it is out now, so I can. So I am excited about that. The last book that I read in April was King's Game, which is a manga series that is a death game sort of thing set in a school where the whole class has to play a game where they get sent texts and they have to do the thing, and it's, you know, I don't know. It had an interesting concept, but I really feel like it didn't go into anything in this volume. It took so long while they were trying to figure out what was happening and why they were dying, and I just feel like it was a bit dumb. And also all of the things that they were doing were like, a kiss so-and-so, show somebody your boobs, have sex, and I'm like, it's just dumb. It just felt like it wasn't being very creative, and I wasn't a fan of that, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was average, and I won't be picking up the next one because I have to pay full price for them, whereas this one was free, so yeah. So those are the books that I read in April. Sorry if my reviews are like all over the place. My brain is still all over the place. You know, illness is what it is. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!